Welcome, my dear adventurers, to Lulora Stories. You have found your way to a quiet harbor, a place where the restless hum of the world begins to fade into gentle echoes. Tonight, we leave the familiar soil of Earth behind to journey across the stars toward a world of bioluminescent forests and floating mountains. But before we travel to the distant moon of Pandora, let us prepare your spirit for the voyage. Take a moment now to just relax and unwind. Find your most comfortable place, a soft nest of blankets or a quiet corner where you feel entirely safe. Gently let your eyes close. There is nothing left for you to see tonight. Let my voice be your only guide. Take a slow, deep breath in, feeling the cool air fill your chest. And now, release it slowly, letting go of any tension you've carried throughout the day. With every breath, feel your body becoming wonderfully weightless. Soften your shoulders. Let your hands rest heavy and still. Feel the relaxation flow down your legs to the tips of your toes. You are safe. You are drifting. And in this stillness, dreams of magic await. Once upon a time, in a future far beyond our own, there was a man named Jake Sully. He was a warrior who had lost the use of his legs. But destiny had a second life waiting for him among the stars. He was called to a world named Pandora, a place of fierce beauty and ancient spirits. Tonight, we begin the long chronicle of his journey, a tale of two worlds, a battle for survival, and a love that bridged the stars. Let the whispers of the forest begin. It came to pass in the year 2154 that the world of man had grown weary and gray. The emerald forests of earth had long since faded, and the deep wells of the earth's magic, the manna that once sustained the life of the soil, had been drained until nothing remained but dust. In their hunger to survive, the people of the stars looked toward the heavens, seeking a new horizon where they might find the treasures they had lost. Among these travelers was a man named Jake Sully. Jake was a warrior, a former Marine who had seen the fires of battle. But those fires had left him changed. His legs, once strong and swift, were now silent and still, leaving him to navigate the world with only the strength of his arms and a heart full of pride that refused the pity of others. His life was a quiet one, lived in the shadows of a world that had forgotten how to dream, until a sudden ripple of fate changed his path forever. Jake had a twin brother, Tom, a man of science and great intellect who had been chosen for a voyage to a distant moon called Pandora. But Tom's journey ended before it could begin, and the great powers of the world came to Jake with a proposal. Because his spirit and his blood were identical to his brother's, he alone could step into his brother's place. He was offered a chance to walk again, to inhabit a body of great power, if only he would brave the long darkness of the stars. For 6 long years, Jake slept in the deep silence of a starship, drifting through the velvet blackness of space until the ship reached the edge of a world that shimmered like a jewel. Pandora was a moon of breathtaking wonder, a place that felt like a dream of the Earth's ancient past. The air was thick with mystery and beauty, yet it held a secret. It was a world where no human could breathe without a mask, for the very atmosphere was a poison to those from the stars. As Jake descended toward the surface, he saw a landscape of impossible green, where mountains floated in the sky like clouds, and great beasts roamed beneath the canopy of trees that reached for the heavens. He was taken to a place of metal and glass, a fortress of science where he met the wise Dr. Grace and a young scholar named Norm. They were the keepers of the Avatar program, a bridge between two worlds. In the heart of this laboratory lay the Avatars, great sapphire-skinned bodies that stood 10 feet tall. They were woven from the essence of the humans and the DNA of the Na'vi, the noble people who had lived on Pandora since the dawn of time. Jake gazed upon his new form, a vessel of carbon fiber bones and muscles like silk, waiting for his spirit to wake it from its slumber. The moment of transition was like a soft whisper. Jake lay within a darkened chamber, his eyes closing in one world and opening in another. Suddenly he felt it. He felt the weight of his limbs, the brush of air against his skin, and most wondrous of all, the twitch of his toes. For the first time in many years, the connection was whole. Though the healers of the lab urged him to be still and to move with caution, Jake's heart could not be contained. He stood, his movements wobbling like those of a newborn creature, but with every step, his strength returned. He pushed through the doors and ran out into the golden light of the afternoon. He felt the soil between his toes, the wind rushing past his ears, and the sheer, intoxicating joy of being alive. He bit into a strange, vibrant fruit, and the sweetness of Pandora filled his soul. He was no longer a man in a chair. He was a child of the forest, reborn in a body of blue and light. But while Jake marveled at his new life, the shadows of the old world were never far behind. He was summoned by the commander of the warriors, a man of iron and scars named Quaritch. The commander saw not the beauty of Pandora, but only the treasure buried beneath its roots, the precious gray stones known as unobtainium. He offered Jake a bargain. If Jake would go among the Na'vi and learn their secrets, if he would act as the eyes and ears of the Iron Fortress, the commander would give him back his human legs forever. Jake, caught between the hope of his past and the wonder of his present, gave his word. He did not yet know that Pandora was not a world to be conquered, but a spirit to be understood. He did not yet know that the trees whispered to one another, or that the ground beneath his feet was a living web of memories. His first journey into the deep wild began with a group of explorers. They flew over rivers that sparkled like silver and landed in the heart of the ancient forest. Jake wandered away from the group, his curiosity leading him deeper into the emerald gloom. He touched the spiral leaves that shrank away at his touch, marveled at the monkeys that swung through the vines, and felt the pulse of the moon. But Pandora is a world of balance. where beauty is often guarded by teeth and claw. Out of the shadows emerged a beast of terrible power, a creature with a head like a hammer and a roar that shook the very leaves of the trees. Jake stood his ground, trying to show the courage of a warrior, but he soon learned that he was but a stranger in a land that did not know him. From the darkness came an even greater predator, a nightmare of black scales and 6 legs, a beast that hunted with the silence of a shadow. Jake fled, his new legs carrying him through the brush and over the roots, until he was forced to leap into the cold embrace of a thundering waterfall. He emerged wet and alone, lost in the vastness of the woods as the sun began to dip below the horizon. He carved a spear from a branch, preparing to face the night, unaware that eyes of amber were watching him from the high branches. It was Neytiri, a princess of the people, who held his life at the tip of her arrow. She watched the clumsy dreamwalker with disdain, ready to strike him down for his intrusion. But then, the spirits of the forest moved. The tiny glowing seeds of the Great Mother, the Atokirina, floated down from the sky like falling stars, landing softly upon her bow. It was a sign. The forest had chosen him, and the story of Jake Sully was only just beginning. As the velvet darkness of the Pandora night settled over the land, Jake found himself surrounded by shadows that breathed and bioluminescence that glowed with a ghostly neon fire. He had been saved from the pack of snarling viper wolves by a huntress of the Na'vi, a woman named Neytiri. She looked upon him not with welcome, but with a fierce and beautiful anger, for she saw him as a child who did not know how to walk or breathe in the world he had entered. Yet, the spirits of the forest, the wood sprites, clung to Jake's skin like tiny glowing stars, and Neytiri knew she could not turn him away. She led him through the glowing forest to the heart of her people, Home Tree, a massive, ancient tower of wood and leaves that reached toward the stars. There, Jake stood before Atukan, the clan leader, and Moat, the high priestess. He felt the cold, sharp gaze of Tsute, the clan's greatest warrior and Neytiri's betrothed, who saw in Jake only a demon wrapped in a false skin. But the high priestess sensed something in this stranger from the sky. She commanded that Neytiri teach him the ways of the people, to see if his dreamwalker heart could ever truly understand the pulse of Pandora. Thus began Jake's transformation. Every day, his spirit would leave the cold metal bed of the human laboratory and wake up in the vibrant blue body of his avatar. Neytiri was a hard teacher. She taught him how to move with the silence of a shadow, how to hear the heartbeat of the earth, and how to speak the liquid language of the Na'vi. She showed him that the forest was not just a place of trees and animals, but a living network where every soul was connected to the Great Mother, Ewa. Jake's first great challenge was to learn to ride the Pali, the 6-legged horses of the plains. He fell many times, his movements clumsy and heavy, much to the amusement of Neytiri and the mockery of Tsute. But Neytiri showed him the Tsahelu, the bond, a physical and spiritual connection made through their neural braids. She told him to feel the animal's breath as his own, to feel its heartbeat against his legs. Slowly, the warrior within Jake began to adapt. He stopped fighting the world and started to flow with it. As the weeks turned into months, Jake lived a double life that grew more exhausting with every passing day. In the world of man, he was a spy, reporting to Colonel Quaritch about the weaknesses of the Na'vi and the structure of Home Tree. But in the world of the Na'vi, he was becoming a man reborn. He began to see that the savages the humans spoke of were actually a people of profound wisdom and grace. He saw the way they cared for the land, taking only what they needed and returning the rest with a prayer of thanks. Neytiri led him higher into the sky, to the floating mountains of Hallelujah, where the clouds drifted beneath their feet, and the very air tasted of ancient magic. Here lived the Ikran, the mountain banshees. To truly become a hunter, a member of the people, Jake had to choose an Ikran, and the Ikran had to choose him. It was a trial of life and death, for the beast that would become his partner would try to kill him first. Standing on the edge of a precipice, Jake faced a creature of wings and teeth. They wrestled on the very brink of the abyss, a frantic dance of muscle and scale. With a final, desperate surge of will, Jake made the bond. Suddenly, the world opened up. He was no longer bound to the ground. He was a creature of the air. He and Neytiri soared through the canyons of the floating islands, their cries of joy echoing against the stone. In those moments, high above the world, Jake forgot about the mission, the colonel, and his broken human legs. But the shadow of the old world was lengthening. The humans were growing impatient. Their great metal machines were moving closer to the sacred groves, their hunger for the gray stone overshadowing any mercy. Jake found himself caught in a storm of his own making. He had fallen in love, not just with the sky and the forest, but with the woman who had taught him how to see. Beneath the glowing boughs of the Tree of Voices, a place where the whispers of ancestors lived in the wind, Jake and Neytiri chose one another. They were now bound forever in the eyes of Ewa. Jake awoke the next morning to the thundering roar of engines. The humans had arrived to tear down the forest of voices. He tried to stop the massive bulldozers, putting his blue body in the path of the steel giants. But it was not enough. His betrayal was discovered by the colonel, and his connection to the Avatar was severed, leaving him trapped in his human body as his new family faced the fire. The peace was over. The dream had become a nightmare. Jake pleaded with the humans for one last chance to talk the Na'vi into leaving, hoping to save their lives. But when he returned to the people, he was no longer the hero who had fallen from the stars. He was a liar, a spy, a bringer of death. Neytiri's heart broke as she realized the truth of his arrival. She cast him out, telling him he would never be one of the people. As Jake sat bound and helpless, the human fleet appeared on the horizon, a swarm of metal insects carrying fire and iron. They were coming for Home Tree, the place where the Na'vi had lived for 1,000 generations. The air filled with the scent of smoke and the sound of screams as the first missiles struck the ancient wood. The sky over the forest of Pandora turned to a bruised purple as the human fleet approached, their great metal wings casting long, cold shadows over the sacred home tree. Inside the village, the Na'vi prepared for a battle they did not fully understand, believing their courage and their arrows could hold back the tide of iron. Jake, trapped between two worlds and branded a traitor, watched in horror as the first canisters of gas hissed through the air, choking the ancient halls of wood. Then came the fire. Missiles struck the great pillars of home tree, and the wood that had stood for 1,000 generations began to groan and splinter. Neytiri's father, the noble Etukan, fell beneath the rain of splinters and flame, passing his bow to his daughter with his final breath. A heavy mantle of leadership for a heart already breaking. As the great tree collapsed in a thunderous roar of smoke and ash, the people fled into the deep woods, their home reduced to a smoldering graveyard. Jake was cast out, his connection to his avatar severed by the kernel, and his spirit locked away in a metal cell. But hope arrived in the form of a brave pilot and a team of scientists who could no longer watch the destruction of a world they had grown to love. They fled to the floating mountains of Hallelujah, the only place where the human sensors could not find them. Yet during their escape, Dr. Grace was wounded, her life force fading like a dying ember. Jake knew that to save Grace and to lead the people back from the brink of despair, he needed to do something that had only been done 5 times in the history of the world. He needed to become the Turuk Makto, the rider of the last shadow. The Turuk was the great Leonopteryx, a beast of orange and black that ruled the skies, a creature so fierce that it feared nothing, for it never looked up to see a shadow behind it. High above the clouds, Jake found the great beast. With a prayer to Ewa and a leap of pure faith, he plummeted from the sky, landing upon the Turuk's back and binding his spirit to the king of the air. When he descended toward the Tree of Souls, where the remnants of the Na'vi were weeping, the wind from the great beast's wings blew back their hair. The people fell to their knees in silence, for the legend had returned in the flesh. Neytiri, seeing Jake atop the creature of myth, realized that his heart was truly one with Pandora. She reached out her hand, and in that moment, the betrayal was forgiven. They attempted to save Dr. Grace by asking the Great Mother to move her spirit into her avatar body forever, but her wounds were too deep. She passed into the roots of the world, leaving Jake with a fire in his soul that could only be quenched by justice. Jake stood before the gathered clans, the riders of the plains and the hunters of the coast, and his voice carried the authority of the Turuk Maktu. He told them that the people from the sky had sent a message, that they could take whatever they wanted. But now, the Na'vi would send a message of their own. They would fly as fast as the wind carried them, and tell the other clans to join them in the final battle for the heart of their world. The war was no longer a skirmish of shadows. It was a battle for the very soul of Pandora. Jake went to the Tree of Souls, the place where the ancestors whispered, and he made a plea to Ewa. He did not ask for victory for himself, but for the protection of the world she had created. Neytiri told him that the Great Mother does not take sides. She only protects the balance of life. But Jake hoped that just once she would hear the cry of her children as the human army mobilized their massive gunships and fire-breathing dragons of steel. The sky filled with the Ikran riders of 100 clans. The final combat had begun, a clash of ancient bows against modern thunder, a battle where the earth itself seemed to tremble in anticipation of what was to come. The final battle for the heart of Pandora began with a roar that shook the very foundations of the floating mountains. The sky was a chaotic tapestry of fire and wings as the Na'vi warriors, led by Jake atop the mighty Taruk, descended like a storm upon the metal fleet. For every gunship that fell to a well-placed arrow, many more Na'vi were lost to the thundering machines of the humans. The brave pilot who had aided their escape was lost in the fray, her ship engulfed in the fires of the Colonel's wrath. Even Neytiri, fighting with the fury of a cornered tigress, saw her noble beast fall and found herself stranded upon the forest floor, surrounded by steel and death. Just as hope seemed to wither like a leaf in the flame, the spirit of Pandora answered. From the deep shadows of the jungle, a wave of creatures, beasts of claw and scale that had never before fought as one, erupted into the clearing. The Great Mother, Awa, had heard the prayers of her children. The forest itself rose up to reclaim its own, turning the tide of the war in a surge of wild, primal power. In the center of this hurricane, Jake found his way to the Colonel's massive command ship. With the strength of his spirit and the last of his explosives, he brought the metal dragon crashing down. But the Colonel would not be silenced so easily. He escaped into a suit of iron armor, seeking out the secret place where Jake's human body lay hidden. A final, desperate duel took place beneath the canopy of trees. Jake, in his avatar form, fought to protect his human self, while the Colonel sought to end the Dreamwalker once and for all. Just as the Colonel prepared to strike a fatal blow, Neytiri appeared. With 2 arrows of ancient wood, she ended the darkness that had sought to consume their world. In the quiet that followed, she cradled Jake's human body, seeing him for the first time as he truly was, small, fragile, and yet possessed of a spirit that had saved a world. The humans were cast out, sent back to their dying star, leaving only those who had chosen the path of peace to remain. On his last day as a human, Jake sat beneath the Tree of Souls. Through the grace of the Great Mother, his spirit was pulled from his broken human shell and woven forever into the blue skin of the Na'vi. He opened his eyes, and for the first time, he was truly home. But peace on Pandora is as delicate as a night-blooming flower. Years passed in a blink, and Jake became a father, a protector of a family that included sons and daughters of both blood and spirit. Among them was Kiri, a child of mystery with a connection to the world that went deeper than any had seen before. There was also Spider, a child of the stars who had been left behind, a boy who walked between 2 worlds but belonged to neither. The harmony was shattered when a new star appeared in the night sky, a ship of fire bringing the humans back to Pandora with a hunger even greater than before. They came not just for stone, but to claim the moon as their own, for their own world was fading into shadow, and leading them was a ghost of the past, the colonel, reborn in a body of blue, his memories filled with a thirst for vengeance. Jake knew that to stay among the forest people was to bring them to ruin. To save his clan, he made the hardest choice a leader can make. He gave up his title and led his family away into the unknown. They fled across the vast oceans, seeking refuge with the people of the water, the Metkaina. In the turquoise depths of the sea, a new chapter of their story was waiting to be written, a tale of waves, of deep bonds, and the long memory of the ocean. The Sully family flew across the endless blue, leaving behind the charred remains of the forest they called home. Jake, once the mighty Taruk Makto, now carried only the weight of a father's fear. After many days of travel across the salt spray and the wind, they saw the islands of the Metkaina, the water people. These islands were like emeralds scattered on a sea of turquoise, where the roots of the great mangrove trees reached deep into the coral. Upon their arrival, the forest folk were greeted with suspicion. The Metkaina, with their thick tails and wide fins, saw Jake and his children as demon bloods because of their thin limbs and 5-fingered hands. Yet, the laws of hospitality were ancient and sacred, and Tonawari, the great Oloikdan of the reef, granted them refuge. He commanded his own children to teach the newcomers the way of water. A new transformation began. Jake, who had mastered the sky, found himself a clumsy child once more in the depths of the ocean. He struggled to breathe, to hold the air in his lungs like a stone, and to ride the skimwings, the fierce, winged beasts of the waves that tossed him into the surf again and again. But Jake was a warrior who had survived 2 worlds, and with the patience of a father, he began to learn the rhythm of the tides. His children, too, sought their place in this blue world. Kiri, the daughter of mystery, found a peace in the water that she had never known on land, feeling the heartbeat of the ocean through the very sand on the seafloor. But Loak, the second son, felt the sting of isolation. He was often the outsider, the one who sought to prove himself, but only found trouble. In his loneliness, he ventured far beyond the safety of the reef, into the deep waters where the monsters of the abyss dwell. It was there, in the mouth of death, that Loak met a kindred spirit. He was saved from a predator by a tulkun, a massive, sentient creature of the deep, a whale-like being of immense wisdom and song. This tulkun, named Payakan, was an outcast like Loak, scarred and alone, whispered about by the Metkaina as a murderer who had broken the ancient vow of peace. But as Loak looked into the great eye of the beast, he saw no monster, only a brother in soul. While the Sully family tried to weave themselves into the life of the reef, The shadows from the sky were drawing closer. The colonel, in his new blue skin, was hunting them with a cold, mechanical precision. He had captured Spider, the boy of the stars, using him to understand the ways of the Na'vi. The humans had brought a new weapon of greed, the sea dragon, a massive ship designed to hunt the Tulkun, not for meat, but for a golden essence called Amrita, a liquid that could stop the aging of man. The peace of the islands was shattered when the humans began to slaughter the Tulkun, the soul brothers of the Metkaina. The ocean, once a place of song, became a place of blood and mourning. Jake knew that the time for hiding was over. He could not run from the war, for the war had followed him into the very cradle of the sea. Loak, hearing the cry of Payakan, rushed to the aid of his brother. He and his siblings were caught in the trap of the sea dragon, becoming the bait for a final confrontation. Jake and Neytiri, alongside the warriors of the reef, prepared for a battle where the sky and the sea would meet in fire. The Great Mother, Ewa, had balanced the forest, and now the ocean itself was preparing to rise. The battle for the family, for the Tulkun, and for the soul of Pandora was about to reach its thundering climax. The horizon of the turquoise sea was swallowed by a wall of black smoke as the great sea dragon ship loomed over the reef. Jake and Neytiri took to the sky and waves, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that their children were held captive within the metal belly of the beast. The Metkaina warriors, fueled by the grief of their slaughtered Tulkun brothers, surged forward like a tidal wave, their spears glinting in the harsh sun. The battle was a symphony of chaos. Payakan, the outcast Tulkun, rose from the depths with a fury that no machine could match, his massive body crushing the human vessels and flinging their soldiers into the waiting jaws of the sea. High above, Neytiri rained down arrows of vengeance, each one a silent prayer for her stolen children. Beneath the deck, the Sully children fought for their freedom. Netiam, the eldest son and the pride of his father's heart, led his siblings with the courage of a true forest warrior. They managed to break their bonds and rescue Spider, but the price of their escape was written in blood. In the frantic exchange of fire, a stray bullet found Netiam. He collapsed upon the rocking deck, his life's breath fading as he whispered his final wish, "I just want to go home." The loss of their firstborn transformed Jake and Neytiri into a storm of primal grief. Neytiri, her heart shattered, became a shadow of death, sweeping through the ship until no enemy dared stand in her path. Jake, seeking the head of the serpent, engaged the colonel in a final, brutal duel as the sea dragon began to sink into the abyss. In the dark, rising waters of the flooding ship, Jake took the colonel's breath, leaving the ghost of his past to be claimed by the deep. As the ship groaned and disappeared beneath the waves, the family found themselves trapped in a watery grave. It was Kiri, the daughter of the spirit, who guided them toward the light. With her unique connection to the sea, she called upon the glowing creatures of the reef to illuminate their path, leading her mother and father back to the surface and into the air. In the aftermath of the fire, a somber silence fell over the islands. The family gathered at the edge of the luminous reef to return Netaim to the Great Mother. His body was laid to rest among the glowing anemones, his spirit joining the ancestors in the roots of the sea. Though their hearts were heavy with sorrow, the Sully family was no longer alone. The Mitkaina recognized their sacrifice and welcomed them not as refugees, but as kin. Tonovari granted them a permanent home among the waves. Jake Sully, once a man of the stars and a warrior of the forest, stood on the shore and looked out at the endless horizon. He realized that running would never protect those he loved. The sea was now his home, its tides his rhythm, and its depths his sanctuary. He bowed his head in a final prayer, knowing that the way of water has no beginning and no end. The family was whole in spirit, and they were ready to defend their new world together. And so, my dear adventurers, our long journey through the forests and oceans of Pandora comes to a gentle close. The stars above are still, and the waves have found their peace. Let the memories of the blue people and the songs of the Tolkien drift with you into the world of dreams. You are safe, you are home, and the Great Mother watches over your rest.